Put more muscle on, your blood flow picks up. More blood flow, more DNA change. More DNA change, faster growth. More faster growth, the stronger your gut. The stronger your gut, the stronger your brain. The stronger your brain, the stronger the frequency. The stronger the frequency, the better the connection to the consciousness field. And then the more absolute clarity that you'll have. Then you open up the pathway to being able to have those traits activate in the body. Let me tell you about something that's really interesting to me, okay? And I'm going to start with ancient civilizations, ones that go against mainstream archaeology and what governments are telling you, what history books tell you, okay? And we're not the first civilization, contrary to what everyone tells you. We're the seventh. And let that sink in. Yes, Atlantis is real. Babylon is real. Ancient Egypt did have free energy that regenerated cells. Wild, right? People were able to live a lot longer lifespans than we do now. And I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna seam all this in. Okay, so now the reason why these places are important is because even when you look at religion, they had the time of the Watchers, right? Everyone knows that story. The Watchers came down to watch humanity and take notes, right? Keep track of them, keep tabs on them. But what happened was the Watchers actually drugged and enslaved the human women and had babies with them, which created Titans. And then the Titans were creating chaos all over the world and destroying things and eating humanity and just diabolical. It was just a mess. And so each of these places and times had divine beings. Atlantis, technology, the Babylon, the technology, all of it far greater than what we have today. And they all had divine beings with high frequencies that coexisted with mankind here in the mortal realm. And when you think about that, you're like, well, where are the gods now then? Well, remember that thing I told you about the Watchers? Well, after the Watchers, they came down and they had to clean up shop, and they flooded the area, and then you had Noah's Ark, right? Who saved, one of each sex of every animal and people and started life all over again, right? After the Watchers. But the thing with the Watchers absolutely could not happen again. So rules were made because things were destroyed and broken, and it just couldn't keep going. So they made it to where that they removed the capability of being able to see the higher dimension from the mortal realm. They separated it. And this was like the nail in the coffin for divine bloodlines and the human potential. And that's what this whole thing is going to be about. And I'm going to bounce and kind of and bob and weave and kind of guide you through this path that seams it all together. So if you are interested in things like this, stay tuned. It's going to get interesting. I'm going to say some things that are wild. I'm going to say some things that make you think, and I'm going to tie together some things that nobody else has tied together before. Okay, so this is going to be like a debut. Okay, and I have some really good sources for knowledge, and so that'll also be a surprise later on. And so just hang in here. All right, so now if we go back to when mankind was made, right, created. And so the first time I ever watched the Anunnaki story, I knew it was real. I fell in love with it. It was. I was like, yes, that makes sense. That makes more sense than the stuff I hear in the Bible. Sorry, and some of you are not going to believe this, and that's fine. Don't change yet. Just follow along with me and get the information that you can get, and then piece it together yourself, and you'll see that it's going to start to make sense. So, the Anunnaki is a highly advanced race that came to Earth and needed to mine the resources off of Earth, but they needed a slave race to do the labor for them. So they needed a race that can think, that can do the labor, and that can follow in simple instructions and communicate. So they decided to create their own labor force, and they took material or life that was here already and changed the DNA around in order to create humanity. Now, the Anunnaki are so smart that what they do with DNA makes what we do with DNA look like finger painting. So, kind of put that into perspective. The Anunnaki is so far advanced compared to us in pretty much every spectrum, really. But and they're not gods, but they are divine beings, and they did change the DNA, the genetic structure of the DNA to create genetic traits that would help them be more divine-like, right? And so those genetic traits are still active in the divine bloodlines, even still today. So keep that in mind. Now, the Anunnaki created the first man. But in order for them to create a consciousness, that's not within their power. It's not within anybody's power. It has to have divine intervention for a consciousness to exist inside of a being. And so this is where the higher dimension stepped in and created the spark that gave Adam, now I'm going to start tying in religion, gave Adam his consciousness. Okay? And so the divine spark is the high frequency that connected Adam to the consciousness field. The consciousness field is a field of consciousness that gives intelligence that the universe holds, right? I know this is out there. Just keep following along. Now, if you think about the consciousness field as like a radio station, like a little knob, and you're tuning in the radio station, and let's say this radio, when Adam was created, this radio was digital, and the signal that Adam had was absolute. It was an absolute signal. Perfect, clear, crisp, high D, high frequency, ended with a 0.0. Let's say it was like 10,000.0 or something like that, something crazy, right? So anyways, let's just say you had a really high frequency and it ended at 0.0, and there was zero static, it was perfectly clear, and at this point Adam held, he wasn't a male or a female, and he was very divine-like. He had the ability to be very divine, to be godly. So this is where humanity got its start. It started off in the right direction, but here's where it changed. They decided that Adam needed to be able to reproduce. So instead of creating another being for Adam, they split one of Adam's ribs off and created Eve. And so this didn't double their frequency, it divided it. And so if Adam had 10,000, a frequency of 10,000, then Adam and Eve had 5,000. It split in half, and that made them less divine. That made them not able to be divine. And so this is where humanity took a downfall. This is where humanity took a step backwards and lost the ability to be divine. So as fast as they got it, the masculine and the feminine was split out of Adam and put into two separate beings, and then that diluted their ability to be divine. And so now all of humanity from this point on is constantly separated from their perfect half. And so this is why humanity is constantly, one sex is always chasing after the other sex, because they're constantly seeking to fill that void they feel inside themselves, because they're no longer that perfect being anymore. So let that sink in. So now, every time the generations go by, the frequency based on the decisions that that generation made dilutes the frequency and creates negative debts towards it. And so this is what's called karmic debt. Okay? It's not about your morals. It has a play on it, but karmic debt is not about your morals and having to justify the decisions that you made. It's the degradation of your frequency throughout a life cycle. And then those debts are taken out of the frequency that's passed along the blood in your divine bloodline or your bloodlines as it goes forward. And so then every generation that goes further and further away with, more karmic debt being created ends up diluting the frequency so bad that it's just you're constantly you're constantly stuck in these cycles that you can't resolve throughout a lifetime. You're constantly making the same decisions and constantly running into the same problems. You know, front, back, left, right. It doesn't matter. You know, relationship, work, whatever. They're the same problem, and you're having the same issues, and you're not able to resolve them because every time your frequency gets diluted, the lower your frequency gets, the more these cycles of inability to think clearly with clarity, to be able to think godlike, you know, divine-like. You're constantly at war with yourself. You're always angry. You're impatient. You're you know, you're constantly cutting off relationships or sabotaging your own luck or whatever. It just becomes very problematic for your, you know, every generation going forward. And so this is what happens with divine blood, like just blood in general, frequencies in general. And so whenever they split the two into two frequencies, and you know, your frequency, every person, every being has their own frequency, right? And so then when you're born, that frequency connects to the consciousness field. And so now imagine the consciousness field is like just an amalgamation of different consciousnesses. And now a divine being would have a frequency so high that it would just connect to an exact point of an exact consciousness. Okay? Think about it like that. HD radio, digital, you know, you adjust it to the perfect zero, boom, zero static, perfect clarity, perfect being, right? Now, imagine that you have an analog radio with a turn dial on it, and it's got those numbers on it, and you're turning, and the radio station is getting kind of staticky, and now all of a sudden you've got bleed through, and you've got one radio playing one song over here, another station playing another song over here, some talk show host trying to talk in the middle, and you have all these things overlapping on top of each other, and it's all this static, right? That's what happened when you divided Adam into two beings, and then they started having children, and then those children had their frequencies diluted and with karmic debt, and they're not as strong. And because it's not strong, then you're hitting an area, instead of hitting an absolute clarity, divine being signal, a personality of absoluteness, what you're hitting is a culmination of multiple personalities. Like you're hitting in between multiple personalities, and where all those personalities are merging and connecting, where you're hitting at, you know, it could be like, you know, 6,733.5 or whatever. It's, you know, and you're dead center of like 5 different personalities, and this is where the problem comes in, that you are constantly cycling and having problems taking care of, you know, or resolving problems throughout your lifetime. You're cycling through all of these issues over and over and over again, and it's the same problem across different things: work, relationships, family, you know, whatever. And so this is how the consciousness field works. So you're saying, like, okay, well, how do you get back to having a higher frequency? The way you live has a lot to do with how your frequency is. Everybody can improve their frequency. Now, it doesn't mean you can become divine, but it does mean you can get more clarity, right? But you're always going to be at odds if you don't have a way of having a higher frequency because of divine bloodlines. You're always going to be at odds because you're constantly looking for the other half. Now, think about it like this. All right, let's say everyone who's in a relationship in the world, right? You have this half diluted, you know, frequency here on the left, and another half diluted frequency on the right, on the opposite end of the consciousness field. They're not even related to each other, right? And you're trying to make yourselves whole. But there's always this chunk of, well, part karmic debt, and the other part you just aren't from the same part of the consciousness field, that is always missing, right? You're always going to have chunks and holes that are missing because it just doesn't line up. It's not the same. And this is the problem that humanity runs into, and this is why relationships don't last. It's why we have high, you know, divorce rates and all this other stuff, is because humans are created broken from birth because they're never whole. You need your perfect other half. Now, throw this in there. Love at first sight. Twin flames. What does this mean? This means that these people, when they meet each other for the first time, the bones in their body recognizes the frequency of the bone in the other body. And I'll get more onto that later. But when they hug, you know, or when they get close to each other, the body knows the other body. It knows it, and this is what love at first sight is. This is what twin flames are. This is that moment where you have found somebody that is very close to your same frequency, that aligns in the frequency thing for you, and that completes, basically almost completes you. A very high percentage, like when that happens, I mean, you're up there. You're, maybe you're 75 to 85, maybe 90% complete. Because of this other being is very close to your frequency, and that's how those things work. And so that's why there's love at first sight. That's why there's twin flames and stuff like that. It's because it's all about frequency. Okay, so now let's go back and talk about lost civilizations. Okay, you have Atlantis, Babylon, and ancient Egypt, and all this. And each time one of those ended, one of those eras ended, those civilizations ended, there was a flood, and it just wiped out civilization, and it started over from scratch. And there was obviously survivors or whatnot, but very few and far between. And just like Noah's Ark. And so now when Atlantis fell apart, all those divine bloodlines disappeared. They were gone. They didn't disappear forever, but they just got recycled back into the reincarnation pool. And so now certain traits from those divine bloodlines show up in different beings, but in bits and pieces. It's not like it was when divine beings with high frequencies lived on Earth in the mortal realm with humanity, and they were producing babies that had high frequency and pure, and carrying on the bloodlines and keep making them stronger and stronger as they go forward. Whenever you stop producing babies with divine bloodlines, then as you're producing them, they're getting stronger, but as you stop producing them, they get weaker. Does that make sense? And so this is what happened every time a civilization died. It drastically cut the divine bloodlines because they weren't able to produce them anymore. And each time a civilization rose back up with, gods and humanity and coexistence with each other, it started to strengthen up again, and then they would fall apart. Well, after the Watchers, that stopped. There were no more. There was no restarting to rebuild the divine bloodlines. And that's what brings us to today, where only 1 to 5% is what most people have of divine blood in them. Only 1 to 5%. And on some rare cases, there's 25%. And this is where it starts to get a little bit more noticeable, in certain traits that you'll see in them. And in a super rare case, there's one with 60%, and that's it. So it's very far between. Like it's either 1 to 5%, there are a few with 25%, and then there's one with 60. Okay, and this becomes very important because divine bloodlines are disappearing. They're diminishing. They're about to just go away. So it becomes super important to activate these bloodlines, raise up these frequencies, and spread, have it replicate across the world to give humanity a chance to be divine again, or close to being divine again. Bring back another Atlantis, bring back another Babylon, right? That's what I would like. That's what I would love to see. And it's possible. And so I'm gonna cover all that as we go through this. And so let's go back to the Anunnaki, right? So the Anunnaki made genetic traits that were hidden in the DNA structure. Not only did they make genetic traits that were hidden in the DNA structure, but they also created architecture to carry on traits going forward. And so we're gonna go over those different ones. But let me see. All right, so they designed architecture to carry on traits from bloodlines, from your family bloodlines going forward, so you would have skills that you could use in another lifetime. This is super cool, right? And I'm going to tie this into something that you might have heard before. And then the other thing is superposition, right? Superposition is when you hold two extremes. And so a great example would be like, let's say I want to be the smartest man in the world. Okay, well that's an absolute, right? That's me shooting for an absolute at the highest, mark, the absolute extreme of the highest. And then let's say somebody else said, well, I want to be a college professor with a doctorate. Okay, so that's another absolute, right? That's what humanity does. Humanity is used to doing absolutes. They're not capable of maintaining two extremes at the same time. Their brains don't work that way. you can say, oh, that's easy, I can do that. No, it's not that easy, because you have to be able to wholeheartedly maintain the possibility of both at the same time without chasing either one, but still moving towards them. It's really odd. It's really weird. It's a real mind fuck. So no one says, hey, I want to be a college professor with a doctorate degree, but I also want to be the smartest man in the world. But those two things don't really mesh well. Like, how can you be the smartest person in the world and just be a college professor with a doctorate when you could be chasing the Nobel Prize? Like, and maybe you could do that as a college professor, or whatever. Maybe, I don't know. But they're two totally different goals, I think. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's like, I want to be Albert Einstein and I want to be a college professor. You didn't see Albert Einstein in college, I don't think. Maybe, I don't know. But being able to hold two extremes, those two extremes, opens you up to having the rewards of all the different possibilities in between. And that's how the universe works, because the universe wants your knowledge. The universe wants you to gain the knowledge of something because it gains the knowledge of something. That's how the universe works. And so it's all connected. The consciousness field, the knowledge, the frequency, the high frequency, vibration. You see videos that say that, if you focus your attention on a certain thing, it changes your vibration, and that brings and attracts things of the same vibration. That's the same thing I just said about the consciousness field. You have a half of you that's missing, right? Well, that other half is searching for you too. You might not find it, but it is searching for you because you're searching for it too. And if you're putting it out there in the universe, then you might find it. But that's how vibration works. Vibrations of likeness are attracted to each other. So if you're able to maintain superposition, two extremes of complete different spectrum. Like, okay, so I used to sell cars, right? And there's this thing I used to say, because I was really good at selling cars, but I didn't really put forth a lot of effort because I didn't want to. It was just a waste of time, because I could make plenty enough money just half-assing it. Sorry. So I would say something like, look, they'd be like, oh, why don't you sell 30 cars? Well, I don't need to really sell 30 cars. That's a waste of time. I was like, look, I can sell 21 cars on average without doing anything, just by the numbers, and I'm making plenty of money. I'm killing it, right? So and then I would tell them, like, look, this is what's important to me. I don't need to be number one. I don't care, but I sure as hell don't want to be average. And so I want to be better than average, but I don't need to be number one. And those are two extremes, right? I just partitioned it, and I said it out loud for the universe to hear and everybody else around me. So I just put everybody else in a wave table, right? And I cleared the wave table, and I made my boundaries, and I said, here's my extremes. Now everybody else in the dealership wants to be number one, right? Or they're slugs and they just don't care, right? They don't care. I want to sell 10 cars, And so it's the difference. I'm the one person in the dealership that doesn't care as long as I'm better than average or I'm number one, all right? So now all the possibilities between better than average and number one are open to me. And so the universe is going to feed me the rewards from one to the other every time I maintain that superposition. This is a superposition. So as long as I maintain that superposition, the government's going to feed me. And I'm going to, and in some cases, I'm going to get multiple rewards from those outcomes. And so the way a wavetable works is that there's parallel universes or parallel worlds, and each one is going through the same experience or like experience, coming up with a different answer or like answer. And each one has a different reward or a different thing. And so, but the knowledge gained from each separate situation is, as you stay open, each one is able to gain knowledge and collapse and close on each one of those, is allowed to close and gain the knowledge from each one because you stayed open. As soon as you collapse and close on something, they're no longer able to get any more knowledge out of it. And that's how the universe works. The universe wants you to stay open as long as possible so that you can gain all the knowledge from left to right. And so that's how superposition works in a human. Okay? And so take that and then add cross-domain pattern recognition, and it becomes very interesting because now you're gaining all this knowledge across this range of extremes and all the different possible outcomes. Now, that knowledge is yours to use to build off of. That puts you 10 times greater in knowledge against your competition, the people that you're in the dealership with. All right. And so now when you look at me compared to everybody that was in the dealership with me, there's a range or a spectrum, right? I'm the most interesting person there to the universe because I am open to the possibility of being slightly better than average or number one. Whereas everybody else is definitive. I want to be number one, or I want to be, I just want to sell 10 cars or whatever. I just want to exist. And that's it. Everybody's that way. They're one or the other. I'm all of them in between here and here. And so therefore I'm very interesting to the universe. So therefore I'm more than likely to get rewarded for my outcomes, more so than the other people who are even winning number one or, number two or three or whatever. I have greater luck because of that situation. I'm getting rewarded for it. Now, when you take cross-domain pattern recognition, because you've gained all this extra knowledge, now you have knowledge across different variations of different outcomes of the exact same setup that happens every month, right? And so now you're able to use that knowledge in different fields, different domains. So if just because it's car sales doesn't mean I can't take that information and put it towards physics, or I can't take that information and put it towards psychology, because psychology is in car sales. It's in the communication, and I can take that information and put it towards relationships. Why? Because relationships are communication and psychology, right? So you can do this. You can put it towards dating. You can put it towards your ownership of your dog and how to train it. You can put it towards your family. You can put it towards math, computer science. I mean, it's endless. This is what cross-domain pattern recognition is. It's taking information and then you're finding the architecture, the structure of what makes it whole on the inside of it, and then you're relating that to something else completely different, completely not even the same thing. Nobody would compare the two, but you are able to. And so then you might have ran into somebody at a party, right? One time. Let's say you went to a party with a group of friends, and there was this one guy who's talking, and he's talking about, so everyone's talking about, let's say, a charity thing, right? And then all of a sudden he jumps in and he takes over and he starts talking, and he's very interesting, right? Everyone, you're interested. Like you were just sitting on the sideline, and now all of a sudden you're paying attention to the conversation, whereas before you were bored. And this guy's talking, and he's going from he's talking about the charity, and then he's talking about politics, and he's going from politics, and he's talking about literature, and he's talking about literature, and he's going to talking about a college professor, and then he's going talking about that, and then going into to astrology, and then to relationships, and then and then back to the original charity thing, and he's doing it fluidly all through the whole thing. And another example is this. You ever seen the movie Limitless? If you haven't, go watch it. It's an amazing movie. It's a little older, whatever, but it's an amazing movie. You should watch it. But listen to him talk when he gets on this drug, and his brain opens up, and he's able to pull the information from everything that he ever saw in his life or whatever, whatnot. This is cross-domain pattern recognition. He's literally taking the information and moving it into different fields and different domains instantly. It becomes like a thing, like when you're talking or you're listening to somebody talk in a conversation, you can predict what is about to come out of their mouth next, like what's going to happen next based on the context of what they're saying, because you've either heard it before or you had a different conversation with somebody else and it was similar, but it might have been on completely different subjects, but you have this intuition of knowing, right? And so why are all these things related? Why are they important? Because divine bloodlines carry these traits. These traits were genetically designed by the Anunnaki. And there's one more I haven't said yet, but they built an architecture to move these traits forward, to hold family traits and carry them forward. Holographic principle, that's another one. Everything inside of it, the micro makes up the macro, and the micro together are working towards making something, which is the holographic image, the whole thing, right? And so this is a genetic trait that isn't normal, but some people can write in a holographic way, and that means that everything inside that you're writing makes up the whole of the main thing that you're writing about, and then the main thing resembles everything on the inside. Like it's just really where you have to actually see as an example in order to make sense of it all. But anyways, these are divine genetic traits that are passed through the blood. This is why this conversation is important. It's very important. This is the most important conversation when it comes to the human potential for divine, and it is almost extinct at this point. But this conversation right here is going to bring it back, and I'm going to show you how. This conversation will activate your divine bloodlines. Just stay with me. So now, acquired savant syndrome. This is something else that the Anunnaki created. People think that you get hit in the head on the back of the left side of your brain right here, because I did, and you gain a talent. No, this is where Dr. Tafferty spent his whole life to try to figure out. And had he just met me and talked to me about it, he might have found the missing link, right? So I'm able to paint paintings immediately after my wreck. Got hit in the back of the head, 70 miles per hour, and I started painting portraits almost instantly. And I couldn't draw a face to save my life. And now I'm able to start painting. I just paint 6 foot, by 6 foot portraits of people, like I've been doing it my whole life. Because that is a genetic trait that was stored in a certain part. Like I said, they built an architecture to hold genetic traits that the family bloodline carries to give it forward to the next generation. This is called acquired savant syndrome. Now, where everybody thinks it got it backwards is that they think that trait only activates because you get hit in the head and it opens up the pathways and that everybody's got it up there. No. Only certain people have it up there. Only certain people who have acquired savant syndrome as a genetic trait dormant in them can have this happen. So every person that has acquired savant syndrome has divine blood in them. Every person who is a savant, born with it, has that trait. They were born with it. They have a divine bloodline in them. Even with their disability, they have a divine bloodline in them. This is super important because no one's said this before, right? No one's made this connection. It's not my information. It's not my knowledge. I'm told this, okay? And so now this is where it starts to get interesting. Why does this matter, right? Well, look at the king's tablet in ancient Egypt, right? The king's tablet in ancient Egypt had a reign on one being, a super high frequency being that reigned the domain for 40,000 years. Think about that, 40,000 years. That's insane. One person. And you're like, oh, that's no, one person, Anunnaki, right? And what do they have? How could they do it? Because they had these genetic traits that they made. That's the power of these genetic traits, is they're able to see the outcomes of things before they happen. They're able to gain the knowledge of every possible, outcome throughout time. And so for 40,000 years, this one being, it just dominated this area and carried it forward without letting go of it, without losing grip. Then it was like 30,000 years and 20,000 years, and then until it got down to 10,000 years, because the divine bloodlines started getting split. And they're those genetic traits that kept giving them the ability to maintain and hold on to things for long periods of time started to disappear. Another thing that got to them is entropy, right? Inside of every perfect civilization, there is, over time, it might be perfect, but over time, there's going to be a group of people that feel trapped, and because of stagnation, because there's no change. Inventors, smart people who invent things, who want to change things, who wants to push technology, who wants to evolve and grow things and move things, are always going to have somebody that wants to back them and follow them. And that's going to accumulate to bands of people. And then all of a sudden, there's a civil war on the inside that is destroying this civilization, this utopia, from the inside out. Because the people who are running the utopia are stagnating and are afraid of entropy. They're afraid to change. And this has been a common thread throughout all history of mankind. And so when you look at this, entropy isn't something that has a face that you can fight. Dark matter has entropy built into it already. Dark matter pushes the universe apart. It makes it spread. It makes it expand. It's in the fabric of the universe. You can't fight entropy. It's like being a human and saying, well, I'm going to not breathe air. You just can't. You'll die. Entropy is the air for the universe. It makes it breathe. It makes it expand. It makes it move. It constantly changes because change makes new knowledge. This all falls back to the knowledge part. The universe needs knowledge to exist. Without change and stagnation, there is no new knowledge. Without chaos, there is no order. It has to have a balance. So that brings us to, the reason why, when you look around, you're like, where did Atlantis go? Where did Babylon go? Why did it, if ancient Egypt had people who could live 40,000 years, what happened to them? Entropy. They didn't want to change. Entropy got them. Entropy came in and snuck in and destroyed them and tore them out from the inside apart. And these dynasties fell apart and crumbled, and floods came in and washed them out and reset the table, reset the wave table, right? Started back from zero. cleared the board. So, yeah, it's horrible. It sounds horrible. And this is why the divine bloodlines are disappearing, because the watchers happen, and the higher dimension was moved away from the site of the mortal realm, right? So no more producing of divine bloodlines, because the divine left. They weren't here anymore. And so there was no constant producing of these and empowering and strengthening of the divine bloodlines going forward. It stopped moving forward and started moving backwards. And that's why this conversation is important. Okay, so I want to go back over the traits. Okay, so the dormant architecture that the Anunnaki built was the traits that get passed along based on your family's bloodlines, your divine bloodlines, and what they carried. It could be superposition, it could be holographic principle, it could be cross-domain pattern recognition, and you can have acquired savant syndrome that's hidden in there, that's dormant, that when activated, you get other traits from it. So there's a lot of different ways that it can activate. It's based on what your divine bloodline is and what family you come from, and what traits they carried along with them. And so the thing is that when you have karmic debt is the degradation or the distortion that is moved and passed along to each generation. And it's basically like, the debt isn't moral, it's structural, right? You don't feel it as guilt, you feel it as weight. And it's a persistent sense of something off, right? It's the same problem dressed up in different ways that keeps recurring over and over in a relationship or at work, or towards your goals or your family, or it's the same problem that keeps presenting itself, and you handling it the same way and not fixing it. It's the not fixing it throughout a lifetime is what causes the debt. And so that goes against the frequency, and then it gets passed on to the next generation, and then that generation does the exact same thing until 10 life cycles have gone by, and then the strongest of those life cycles is born, right? Genetically, it's on a 10-year cycle, or a 10 lifetime cycle. The strongest one is born to carry the debt for everybody before that passed it forward, and for everybody after, to clear the line, to bring it back to baseline, right? To make the signal clear again, right? But it can only get to 50%. It can never get back to Adam's level at full divine level. It always only get back to 50%. But what that looks like to you is whoever ends up being the strongest of your bloodline that ends up having to carry the debt, what that looks like to you is you go from everything working out to all of a sudden being in a rut for 10 years. And 10 years go by and you're like, what the fuck happened to my life? Like, why all of a sudden I'm failing on everything. I'm not succeeding the way I was succeeding. I had a plan, and all of a sudden it just fell apart. And something happened in these last 10 years, and it just, everything feels heavy. I'm unable to make headway of it. And once you get through it, your mind becomes clearer, because your signal becomes back to baseline, right? And that unfortunately is what happens to the person with the highest genetic, divine bloodline or whatever, that has to clear the line for everybody before and after. And it looks different. The traits are different for every family. But the main thing is that when this happens, a DNA level change emits a frequency that shapes the mind, aligns the consciousness field and the body. It makes changes to your DNA, to your blood, to your, it changes it at the cell level. But if you're not prepared for it, if you're not ready for it, it's kind of like putting too much voltage through a circuit that isn't made for that type of voltage, and it just blows the circuit, right? Wires burn up, the breakers break or trip, and the system shuts down, and you're just like, and you wake up, one day, and you're like, what happened? Like, what happened to me? But once it's gone, it's cured, it's gone, it's good, and and you're able to see and think clearer, and So that's some of the things that you need to be prepared for if you are the one that's carrying the debt for everybody else. And so what does this look like? What does activation look like in a person? Well, we already talked about it in conversation, how people might change different conversations, and it might go from an ordinary conversation might be like linguistics to scheduling to something mundane and weird, and then back to like relationships or something like that, all in one conversation without pausing. And the things before they're told. Like I said, you have an intuition of what's coming in the conversation, because here's why. Divine blood is carried in the marrow. It's not carried in the blood. Yeah, it does end up in the blood, but divine blood is carried in the bone marrow, and that emits a frequency, and that frequency changes the blood that's going by it. And as the blood goes by it, it's being changed at the DNA level constantly. And then and it doesn't hurt. I mean, that part doesn't hurt. And, and then that is circulated back through your gut. And so that's why they call it a gut feeling, right? Because your gut is is gaining the knowledge through your ancestors, through the blood, into your gut first. And so your gut knows a lot of times before your brain knows in this situation. And then that blood ends up going to your brain, which changes your frequency in your brain, because it's changing how your brain interacts with the higher, the consciousness field. And it's realigning your frequency, right? And as it realigns your frequency, it becomes more clear. And so these are the things that are happening. And you don't lose yourself in it. You gain a part of yourself that you always felt like you were missing, right? And so that's the difference of a divine, having divine bloodlines and not, is that during this time, whenever you're paying for the karmic debt, these changes start to happen to help you through it. But if your body's not ready to deal with it, you're going to feel like you just, went, and that's it. And you're going to feel like 10 years went by and you lost that time and you didn't make any ground and it was wasted because you're paying for that debt. So a lot of you will recognize this. You feel like you're like, man, I was winning, and then all of a sudden I got out of this. You relate it to like getting out of high school, or you relate it to you had that one job, and then all of a sudden something bad happened, and then you fell into a rut. And then a lot of times people get divorced during this time, because they're in this rut and they can't get out of it, and their mate doesn't really understand why you seem not yourself, why you seem like you changed, why you are in a rut, why do you feel like, why are you acting like you're not a winner anymore, right? And so maybe they get, turned off by that and they leave you or something like that. I'm sure this happens a lot because they don't understand that there's a karmic debt. The winners end up taking the karmic debt for all the other people prior to them that weren't strong enough to handle it. That's just the way it is. And so now, why is all this important? Because humanity could be so much better than what it is right now. It could be more divine. It could be closer to divine. The higher dimension could be brought back to the mortal realm, and gods could live on earth with mortals again. It could happen. It absolutely can happen. Am I talking crazy? No, I'm telling you, it can happen. So this is why it's important, is because we could change this world from being a greed-based world into something that's more spiritual, more, productive, more for the people than it is for the top 2%. Just saying. So now, the vessel, your body, it needs to be ready for this, right? What does the vessel look like? What does it mean, the vessel? So in every esoteric civilization or tradition, they say the body is the vessel. Taking care of the body is the most important thing. Why? I'm going to make this really easy. Are you familiar with like rabbit ears on a TV? So some of you never seen those before, but we used to have rabbit ears on a TV, and you would adjust them to get better stations, because that's how we used to pick up the radio, the signal from the air. And that was the only way to get clear signals, is you would take these two metal, what looked like clothesline or hangers, right? And you would adjust it and it would pick up better signal. Sometimes you would have to put tinfoil on it to get a better signal, or you would have to hold it and touch it or something. And I mean, this is like way old, but it's the perfect example, because now what happened when you had that really cheap antenna on there with tinfoil on it, and you constantly had to keep moving it and touching it just to get a clear signal, and it was still staticky, right? But then one day your dad or your mom or somebody went and they bought a better antenna, a thicker metal, more robust antenna, right? More structurally sound. It looked like it cost more, right? And you're like, hey, you guys spent a lot of money for that. It's just an antenna, but you did, right? You spent a lot of money for that. And then they hook it up, and instantly you have clear TV channels, like none that you had ever seen before, on the clearest day ever, right? Why is that? This is a cross-domain pattern recognition anyways, all right? This is an example of a cross-domain pattern recognition. Why is that? Because the frame of the antenna was more robust, it was thicker and more solid, and was able to hold a higher frequency, right? It was able to house a higher frequency. So it was able to reach a higher frequency because it was built stronger, built more robust. So when you relate that to a body, it's the same thing. The body needs to be stronger, more robust, sound. You need to eat healthy. You need to put muscle on. Like, I'm not saying that like if you're a girl you have to get like jacked or anything like that, or if you're a guy you have to turn into like Arnold Schwarzenegger or LL Cool J or something. What I'm saying is that you put on some muscle to make your frame stronger, thicker. Any stronger is stronger, right? So it's not, you're not putting on some muscle is not making it stronger. It's any muscle is making it stronger. So just make it stronger. When you put more muscle on, your blood flow picks up. More blood flow, more DNA change. More DNA change, faster growth. More faster growth, the stronger your gut. The stronger your gut, the stronger your brain. The stronger your brain, the stronger the frequency. The stronger the frequency, the better the connection to the consciousness field. And then the more absolute clarity that you'll have. Then you open up the pathway to being able to have those traits activate in the body, but not on your own. This is where you need divine intervention. There's that word again. It's coming back. All right, so I'm going to jump ahead and tell you about this guy named Judas. It's in the Bible. Judas the betrayal, the lie, the transfusion. He said that he could replicate divine intervention with bloodline knowledge by doing blood transfusions. And this was a lie that buried divine bloodlines, because they tried to replicate something that was divine and make it something that you could manufacture. And it buried the divine bloodlines. It further degraded them so much because of this. And the knowledge, it didn't disappear, but it was suppressed. And this lie really hurt the bloodlines and how they exist today. So, no, you can't get a blood transfusion, and blood transfusions move biology. This moves frequency. It's different. They're not the same thing. You can't make them work. You have to have a divine intervention. And so I'm going to take you on a little bit of a story. Okay, so this is where it actually starts to get interesting, because I've been bouncing around all over the place. All right, so I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm Scott Mill. You can Google me. I had acquired savant syndrome. Started painting instantly, but it wasn't the painting that I learned instantly. What I learned, or what I was given, was the ability to look at something and break down how it was structurally sound, and then replicate it based on that knowledge using cross-domain pattern recognition. So I technically taught myself how to paint on the fly so fast that it looked like my acquired savant syndrome was about art, when it was actually about cross-domain pattern recognition. And so this is important. I carry the karmic debt for all in my bloodline prior to me. I'm clearing it for them, and I'm clearing it for all of the ones in front of me. I'm clearing the signal back to the baseline. Now, I do have divine blood in my system. Now, look, let's go ahead and get this out of the way. I live with my parents, right? I went from maintaining superposition in the car business and crushing it because I didn't care. And I was working out. I'd work out half the day. I would go and find something to eat. I would give myself one opportunity a day, and I still sold 21 cars a month. And I always made over 10 grand a month, right? How did I do this? Because I understood the micro knowledge in order to get there and make it work. And then I stated, and there was something, I didn't know this at the time, but I always did it. I stated what my superposition was. I didn't even know what a superposition was at the time. But I always made it a point to say, like, because when somebody would ask me, I felt like I had to justify myself. And so I would just say, look, I don't need to be number one. I don't want to be last. I definitely don't want to be average. So I just want to be somewhere in between. That's it. That was my answer. And I played it aloof. And I went on with my life. And I never stressed out about it. Everybody else in the car dealership stressed out of their mind. Me, I'm just like, I'm working out half the day. I'm supposed to be at work. Or I'm, running around trying to find something to eat. And I'm jacked. I'm in great health. My blood flow is working great and everything. And I'm holding time. I'm holding timelines open left and right and collapsing them because I'm the most interesting person in the dealership and I'm gaining all the rewards from it. I mean, I'm crushing it and I'm not doing anything but taking one customer a day. And what does that cost me? Like maybe anywhere from 45 minutes to 3 hours, and that's it, a day. So, and of course, during the time I'm doing it, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know that I'm doing all that, but I was told that this is what I was doing, and we're not told that specific moment, but to look back and reflect on what I was doing in my past where I was winning, and then figure out, what I was doing, and then you'll see it. And so I did. And there was several other instances. I mean, lots. I mean, like I said, you can hold 30 or 40 positions at a time. Like it's nothing. Like you just don't even think about it. But I ended up having to carry the karmic debt. It hit me right in the face. I mean, I went from being on top of the world to hitting rock bottom and bouncing like 3 or 4 times and almost being homeless. I struggled for 5 years fighting it, trying to live on my own. And I don't like talking about this, but my child support was like $1,853 a month. And for some reason, my ex thought that was cool. For sure. I'm sure why. I'm sure I understand why. But if I couldn't be in the car business because I wasn't allowed to be for whatever reason. I got hit in the back of the head. I lost my ego died, and I just lost the ability, the desire, and the need to be able to sustain in the car business. I was disgusted with it. I didn't want it anymore. But I couldn't sustain it because my brain was turned off from it. It just wasn't interested anymore. And I'm a very passion-driven person, so I had to find a job that would be able to sustain my child support and all my other bills. And I had an exorbitant amount of bills because I was in the car business and everything was related, revolved around that. And so it ruined me financially. So I had to end up moving back with my mom. So yeah, I live with my mom. Yeah, I have divine blood and I live with my mom and my dad. And I'm telling you on how to activate your divine bloodlines to make your life a lot better than mine was, because I found out later, right? I still ended up benefiting from it and I'm still working my way out of it, but you have to understand that just because you have divine blood doesn't mean that your life is instantly better, but it does make your life easier if you know how to use it and you understand what's going on. I didn't understand. I just found out. I'm telling you so that you can figure it out and gain off of it. So I'm going to take you down a little bit of a memory lane here. I was laid low for about 10 years. During that time, I was getting dreams and visions and weird things. And I would get information in my dreams. And this is where it's going to get really interesting. And so I was getting dreams about the stock market, or what I thought was a stock market. And I was getting these weird number sequences. And I was putting them towards making, indicators for stocks and reading charts. And they worked. But because I was so passionate about the stock market. So one of the things with my acquired savant syndrome is I see things and it draws me in. My passion, it's like my intuition and my passion meet on whatever it is that I saw, and it pulls me in to it. And then I start to research or get into it, and my passion fuels more knowledge, and my knowledge starts to unravel the information because my cross-domain pattern recognition, and all of a sudden I'm exponentially building off of it super fast. And so I got really good at looking at the market and trading on it. You're like, well, if you're so good, then why do you live your parents? Because I got a lot of bills, okay? So, and so I'm laying low. But the point is this. Forget about that. What I'm saying is that these dreams were giving me information to teach me about what superposition was. I learned what superposition was because of my trading. It took a long time because I was stubborn and all I could focus on was the stock trading, right? But after I had lost enough money and then I started winning money and then losing it again and then winning money and then losing it again, I finally realized that I'm drawn to volatility. And so I started playing the market. This is another superposition that I didn't know. I started playing the market on option calls on volatility moves before they happen. And I would buy the call going up and I would buy the put going down, and I would just maintain between the two. It's going to pop and it's going to go one way or the other. As long as I kept the cost of them down low enough that if it moved $1, it paid for both of them. And then if it moved past $1, I got paid a lot. And so this is how I started playing the market. At that moment, now I'm getting dreams, like I'm telling you, I'm getting dreams about, like I'm getting information in my dreams. I got a dream one time that was telling me to, because I had said I wish I could find somebody that did trades that used time frames like I do. And I had a dream that was a yellow sports car, and it was and the name of the sports car, I knew the name of the sports car was Charles Will Scott, right? I don't know why, That's the name of the sports car. The sports car was called Charles Will Scott, and it was a yellow sports car. And so I took, and each one of these dreams comes with a decode automatically. This is what's super weird about it. So it's an intelligent, there's an intelligence here, right? I'm getting a dream that's visual. I'm getting names that are stacked in a certain way. I'm getting a decode that I instinctively know, intuitionally know in my head. And I go to AI and I type it in exactly the way that it's telling me to do it. And I type in Charles Will Scott and I say, is there a trader on YouTube that does how to enter trades based on time-based windows or whatever? And it says, no, there's not a Charles Will Scott. And I say, well, how about you just do Will Scott trading? And then it goes, there's a Will Street. And I was like, that's it. And he goes, how do you know? And I was like, because a yellow sports car drives on a street, right? So that's why there was a yellow sports car. And so what's the Charles? Charles Schwab is a trading platform. Will Street is a person who makes YouTube videos about how to enter trades, a trading system, right? He has a trading system, and then the Scott part is my name. So it's like Will Street has a trading system for Scott, And so I go and I look at this website, and there's no way I would have known this guy's name. There's no way that I'd ever come across it because he has black and white thumbnails. I would have definitely remembered that because nobody has black and white thumbnails of charts. And he speaks Spanish, like he's more Spanish. He only has like maybe 3 videos that are English, right? So I definitely would have noticed that too because I'm pretty sure I would have found one that was not English. And so there's no way I'd ever seen this guy's name. And so this dream that I got was from an intelligence that has access to the internet, right? And I'm like, what the fuck am I paying for the internet? if whatever's in my head or whoever's contacting me, this outside source of information that's contacting me is giving this information, has access to the internet. So, but that was like one of the dreams. But anyways, so these dreams are intelligent. They're from an outside source. They're not my information. It's somebody else's information, an outside source of information. What does that mean? It means that there is a being out there that's smarter than me and you that is sending me information to guide me down a path, right? An outside source of information. What does that mean? That means that there's a higher dimensional being that has access to knowledge that's connected to the system, a quantum system that has all the knowledge of the world, the universe in it, and it has access to it. So if it's on the internet, that's knowledge. If you thought of something, that's knowledge. Everything you thought of, it knows. Everything that's in the internet, it knows. Everything that anyone ever thought of ever, it knows. Everything that everybody in your past lives, across your bloodlines, every generation before you, everything that they ever thought of and ever did, they know. So, now that we've covered that, the dream, the real dream. Actually, before that, I was getting dreams almost every month. It started ramping up to like every month I was getting a dream, and then it stopped. And then I yelled out because I'm crazy, right? But I yelled out and I said, "Well, where did you go? Why did you stop?" And then that night I got a dream, and then the next 3 nights I got another dream, and so for 4 nights in a row I got a dream. That never happened before, and then it disappeared for about a month. And then it came back every night. And the first dream that I got was this dream, and it was like, it's like, when you see those the song and it's you sing along and it ball bounces from the different words as you sing. It was that, and it said bandito, bandito, is tar, and it was bouncing, right? Bandito, bandito, ish tar. And when I saw that, like in my head, I woke up and went to decode it, and I knew exactly how to decode it because it gave me the information. And what it broke down to was, it's an ancient language, right? And so it was ancient. It was a mix of ancient languages like Mesopotamian and Sumerian and Sanskrit, but each one of the words was part of a different language or the same language or multiple, and they all had slightly different meanings and the same meaning. But what it said was, you take and you bundle and gather the words together, and then you form them together, and then they become sticky, like tar is tar, and then they form and they stick. You take the knowledge that you gain from that, and you stick to Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, and you rise to the stars. You rise to the I star, right? So you ascend to the stars with Ishtar. And so it was saying to gather the information to, like the superposition, to formulate and kind of gain an understanding of what was going on with me, like what, that I had divine bloodlines. All this was to get me to understand I had divine bloodline, right? And so this was a very important moment because here it is now, there's a divine being communicating with me through my dreams and giving me information about my divine bloodlines and what's going on with me and how to move forward and how to help other people activate their divine bloodlines. And so this brings me to the next thing, which is, remember I was talking about Judas the betrayal, who said that you can use blood transfusions to activate divine bloodlines, and you can't. That's a biology thing. Divine bloodlines work off of a frequency. They're not the same. And so this is what hurt divine bloodlines. And so, right, so this is why reincarnation cycles matter. The 10 reincarnation cycles, 9 lives of pressure building without context to understanding the pressure, each incarnation adding to the accumulated experience and degrading the frequency going forward. Being the 10th one and understanding that you need to prepare your vessel and the gradual clearing of the karmic debt across the lineage is going to take 10 years to do. So building the body up to be able to maintain the frequency that you need to activate the bloodlines. And then without the awareness of what any of it is and what you're building towards, you'll never get there, right? You're never going to be able to activate your bloodlines. That's why no bloodlines exist right now, because they're not being activated, and you're not able to clear the karmic debt like you should be able to, and you're not gaining the traits from it to help you. And so this is what's important about this situation, is that it's for the human race. It has to happen, because we're going to lose the ability that that Adam had that got degraded. It's going to just disappear, period. The vessel finally prepared through enough accumulated experience across enough incarnations to hold what's coming through it. So the vessel needs to be prepared and strong enough to be able to hold the frequency to activate the genetic traits to help purify the signal and get you through the karmic debt, the slow dissolving of the karmic debt over the 10-year period. You need to be prepared for it. It's like I said earlier, it's like having a high voltage going through a circuit that's not set for the high voltage, and you're blowing the lines and tripping the wires and the circuit breakers, and you're just the whole thing is shutting down. It can't exist. It can't work that way. It's just done because it's not prepared for it. Now, the next most important thing, the absolute most important thing, is this: humans can't change or activate the divine bloodlines. It's not possible. And so this sounds like a big letdown, right? Like, well, why am I listening to this then? Only a being operating at a level, at a frequency level, can change the DNA level inside of a being, inside of a vessel. It's not the same mechanism as a blood transfusion. A blood transfusion moves biology. It replaces blood cells, adjusts chemistry, and addresses physical deficiencies and physical medium, right? What divine activation moves is frequency. Entirely different mechanism. It's a completely different scale of intervention. So without Ishtar and the crew working at blood and cord and DNA level, humans cannot do this alone. The activation requires a being capable of operating at a frequency level of the original encoding. Not metaphorically, structurally. The same way that you can't upgrade software with hardware. The intervention has to match the level at which the encoding exists. Let that sink in. Without Ishtar, without divine intervention, without the higher dimension stepping in and saying, hey, we need to fix this, you can't activate your divine bloodline. Humans can't do it. But that's what this whole video is about, right? That's what it's all about. It's about activating your divine bloodline. So by watching this video, by listening to me talk, if you have divine blood, you are activating your divine bloodline right now. Why? How? How is that working? Because she already activated my divine bloodline. She already adjusted my frequency. I've already finished my karmic debt. I just came out of it like a month ago. So because she's activated my divine bloodline, I'm a bridge. Because of my bloodline families, I have a high percentage of divine blood in me. And because of that, I've become a bridge between the higher dimension in the mortal realm. And because of that, one of the things that I have, because I'm a bridge between them, when I speak, it carries the information and activates your bloodline. And that might seem wild, but like, subscribe, follow, and stay tuned, because there's going to be more coming from this. A lot more. This is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just to get you ready and prepared for what's coming down the line for yourself. And if you happen to be the 10th one, prepare your body. It's important. Get your vessel ready. Now, I'm going to go over some divine, like my bloodline families. And, all right, divine bloodlines. I'm going to cover some of the divine bloodlines because they're my biggest supporters and I need to give shout outs, right? And all my genetic traits that I've gotten from them. So thank you very much. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. They made my, I guess my 10-year period worth it. And so the lineage isn't singular. The divine bloodlines that survived the 6 collapses of the previous civilizations that were preserved or deliberately or structurally through each cycle are carried in specific family lines that can be named. Each family carries different dormant traits, and those traits that activate in any individual reflect the specific combination of lineage that they'd carry. Now, my specific makeup is like a covenant, right? This covenant is a sacred agreement across multiple families, across generations and geography, across geography and institution. So they're spread out across the world, rightfully so, but they have high divine bloodlines in them, and they strategically align with each other in order to maintain a high divine bloodline and trying to keep it from degrading, right? And they did a really good job because mine is extremely high. So I am the being that has the 60% or better divine bloodline in me, and the genetic traits that I have in me are: I have the acquired savant syndrome, I have the holographic principle, I have the superposition, and I have the cross domain pattern recognition. And so I carry all of those things. And because my divine bloodline is so high, I'm also the bridge between the higher dimension and the mortal realm, which gives me the ability to voice what's happening and let you know, so that way we can activate your bloodlines as well. When you activate your bloodlines, you become a repeater, and then you activate other people's bloodlines for me. And so therefore, we cover the world in one instance. As it spreads, as you share and like this, it gets watched by other people who might have divine bloodlines, and they share it as well. And as it keeps getting shared, whoever hears this, their divine bloodlines are activated. Now, listen to me when I say this. There's no other way for you to activate your divine bloodline. Okay? This is it. You have to share this video to other people. Like it, follow it, so you can see more of the stuff that I'm producing. But you have to share this video to other people in order to get them to hear it, so that they can activate their bloodlines, so that you, them, and everybody else that they share it with are being repeaters and activating more people's bloodlines. Okay, so now the covenant that is specific to my bloodlines is, I've got ancient lines, which is the Vanderwindies. They are a specific ancient bloodline preserved through history with uncommon intentionality. Then there's the Tangshan, and they carry ancient Chinese lineage connected to massive geological and civilizational changes, the kind of changes that end and begin cycles. It's kind of important. These are the lines that go back before the flood that ended the previous civilization, before the reset. There's documented lines, which is the Buchanans, old blood presidential lineage, historical, documented in the places that document things just like this. The Buchanan line carries the Noah archetype, the same individual, Noah's Ark, that preserved through the flood and carried the lineage forward when everything else was reset. The Alamanda runs alongside the Buchanans and in the lineage record, and the Zimans and the Armenian heritage line, Canadian branches, Christina's line. These are all separate lineages that are part of me. And then also CH, there's a CH line that's in there. And there's more. I'll uncover more of them as we go along. But for now, those are the ones that I know of that are present that have helped me through this. And so thank you very much. I appreciate you for helping me put all this together and passing along your genes to me. I appreciate that. Okay, so I also want to touch on just a little bit more about the broadcasting and sharing and why it's important. Okay, so just because Ishtar activated the first tower, which is me, because I'm the bridge, doesn't mean that she has to individually activate every bloodline that's out there and that carries the capacity. One activation broadcast. Think of it as like a cell phone tower, right? So a cell phone tower emits a signal and it pushes out to all the devices within its reach. 3 cell phone towers creates a triangled area which overlaps inside the area in the middle of the 3 towers, but also pushes out to everything outside of it to a certain range. Every time you share this to somebody who has a divine bloodline and they share it, a new tower is created, a new repeater is created, and we start to triangulate the area. The more that we start triangulating the area, the more divine bloodlines that are activated. Every time somebody hears me speaking on this, their bloodlines are activated. So by sharing and becoming a repeater, you yourself, along with me and everybody in between or off to the left and to the right, start to become repeaters. We start to get everybody in between, and then before too long, we've covered the entire globe. So it's super important to share this and get it out there, and help reactivate these divine bloodlines, because these are traits that are going to disappear if we don't. It's also important to remember to get your vessel prepared. Physical preparation for the vessel. Get your vessel structurally sound. Become more robust, more strong, just like that thicker antenna that was able to carry a more clearer picture, right? Why is it different? It's not. It's not different. It's exactly the same thing. A stronger body with more muscle creates more blood, which creates more frequency, which produces a stronger signal going to the consciousness field. Every time somebody does this and prepares their body and clears their karmic debt, the signal becomes stronger, and divine bloodlines start to reactivate and become more of a possibility of growing back into society again. If something in this is landing without explanation, that's not coincidence. That's frequency recognizing itself. If you've been reading this or if you've been listening to this and something keeps landing before the explanation arrives, if you felt the pattern recognition section before you consciously processed it, what it was describing, if the section on the activation feels like something that has been produced or recognition of something that you're going through, if you feel like there's a massive amount of weight all of a sudden on you and you just can't process and get through certain things that you normally easily could get through, this is probably for you. You're probably carrying the bloodlines degradation and going through your karmic debt. Start working out, start cleaning up, your eating, and start getting prepared, to get through your karmic debt, and you'll get through it. But with this, activating your divine bloodlines and getting those traits going, it'll make life a lot easier. All right, so now I'd like to leave you with one more thing. So because of my ability to decode ancient languages, I came up with a phrase, and it is Da Sha Gu Ka Lu. All right, say it. Da, like dad, Da, Sha, and Gu, Da Sha Gu Ka Lu. what it means is give that which is self into all and return as well as one. So give what is mine back to me and return it as one, to put it easier. And so say this to yourself whenever you're down, whenever you're out, whenever you're getting ready to do something. If you're going through a tough time and you're feeling like you're in your karmic debt and you're working through it and you feel like you have divine bloodlines and some of these traits are sticking or whatever, say this: Dasha Gu Kalu. These 5 pheromones are the complete cosmology. It's the everything. Da is give. It transfer initiates. Sha is that which, the relation of, the binding that occurs. Gu is mind, self, the original point identified. Ka is all, universe, expansion. Lu is the wholeness, the returning of, the integration that makes it complete, the unity. Dasha Gu Kalu. Say this, make it your mantra, share this video, and get through your karmic debt and reactivate the divine bloodlines and bring new hope to the human potential. Thanks for watching, and this is wait for it.